Breaking news from a wonky world of cockwombles, because, quite honestly, there's so much.
A political earthquake just hit Westminster, and at the centre of it all stands Angela Rayner, Labour's fiery deputy leader, once celebrated as the voice of working people, is now fighting for her political life. The woman who promised fairness is being accused of hypocrisy, property profiteering and outright deceit, and leading the charge against her, Katie Hopkins, unfiltered, unapologetic and armed with evidence that could shatter Rayner's career. This isn't politics as usual. This is a full-scale reckoning, and it's tearing through the heart of the Labour Party.
Refuse to acknowledge what's happening here in the UK and what's being done to you. I would say this, if you carry on like this with your head in the sand, it's always going to be so much easier, isn't it, for the government to take you right up the.
The political storm sweeping through Britain has reached a breaking point, and at its centre stands Angela Rayner, Labour's fiery deputy leader and current housing minister. But this time, she's not commanding the dispatch box or delivering impassioned speeches in Parliament. Instead, she's been thrust into the heart of a controversy that threatens to shake the foundations of her political career. Leading the charge in this very public reckoning is none other than Katie Hopkins, outspoken, unfiltered and utterly relentless. Known for her uncompromising style, Hopkins' latest broadside wasn't a measured critique or a mild rebuke. It was a full-force assault, branding Rayner's actions as one of the most brazen examples of political hypocrisy Britain has seen in years. What follows is a clash of words and reputations, a moment that could redefine both women's standing in the public eye.
Prices of the whole summer, when you don't need your heating on, they put the price down. The minute it's fucking freezing and we're about to go into properly Baltic, they shove the price up by 10%. And my question is, where are elderly people supposed to get an extra 150 quid? Or 1,500, or 2,000, or whatever their extra bill is, right? £300. Where are they supposed to rustle that? What would you like them to do?
From the moment Katie Hopkins began speaking, one thing was unmistakably clear: she wasn't there to play nice. There was no room for political pleasantries, no soft language, and certainly no attempt to cushion the blow. And when it came to Angela Rayner, one of Labour's most prominent and polarising figures, Hopkins wasn't about to let her hide behind rehearsed press lines or party spin. What Hopkins unleashed wasn't mere outrage. It was something far more telling: the raw frustration of millions of ordinary Britons who feel ignored, betrayed, and disillusioned by a political class they believe has abandoned any real sense of integrity or accountability.
Rachel Reeves, what would you like them to do? Would you like them to what? Auction off a kidney, maybe? I mean, what use is a fucking 85-year-old kidney? It's probably knackered. It's had that much piss go through it over a whole lifetime. They can't sell one of them. What do you want them to sell? Their eyeballs, well, the half of them can't fucking see because they're 95. Where are they supposed to find the money? What, under a mattress? Really? That's what really bugs me, is it's going to cost them more. Okay, where are they supposed to get it? What, are they going to go out and work, are they?
Angela Rayner, a politician who has long styled herself as a voice for the working class, now finds herself at the centre of a scandal so glaring that, as Katie Hopkins sharply remarked, even a toddler could see through it. According to multiple reports, Rayner may have misled authorities about her living arrangements during the sale of a former council house she purchased under Margaret Thatcher's Right to Buy scheme. The property, designed to help working families climb onto the housing ladder, was bought at a substantial discount, then later sold for a notable profit. But here's where it gets complicated. Evidence suggests Rayner may not have actually been residing at the property, at the time, a detail that turns this from a technical oversight into a potential breach of both legal and ethical standards.
Sir Keir Starmer was outlining his plans to solve the housing crisis by building 1.5 million new houses today, but he's been overshadowed by his deputy leader's very own housing crisis. Angela Rayner is tonight facing a potential police investigation over accusations that she lied about her living circumstances before she sold her former council house.
According to official electoral records, Angela Rayner was registered at a Manchester address she claimed as her primary residence, yet her husband and children were listed at an entirely different location. Under UK electoral law, that's not a small administrative error. It's a potential breach of the law. Voters must register at their genuine, permanent residence. Anything else isn't just misleading, it's illegal. This isn't the kind of mistake that can be brushed aside as a clerical oversight. For someone holding one of the highest offices in the country, it's a revelation that could have serious, even career-ending consequences. And remarkably, the embarrassment for Rayner doesn't end there, it only deepens.
Now, Rayner bought a former council house in Manchester in 2007 under Margaret Thatcher's Right to Buy scheme, before selling it 8 years later in 2015. But it's emerged that despite Rayner being registered at the address of that Manchester council house in 2010, her husband and 2 youngest children were registered at another address.
As housing minister, Angela Rayner once stood before the nation with unmistakable conviction, pledging to confront Britain's deepening housing crisis head-on. She promised the delivery of 1.5 million new homes, a figure that became a centrepiece of Labour's campaign messaging and a rallying cry in press conferences across the country. For countless families trapped in overcrowded flats, struggling under rising rents, and watching the dream of home ownership slip further away, that vow offered a rare moment of hope. Yet today, that bold commitment appears to have vanished, buried beneath layers of political spin and silence, leaving behind a growing sense of frustration and disillusionment.
Now, under electoral rules, voters must register at their permanent home address, and anyone that knowingly provides false information could face a criminal conviction and prison time.
No updates, no explanations, no results. Katie Hopkins didn't merely criticise this failure, she dissected it with surgical precision, exposing what she described as the bitter irony of a housing minister who once profited from the very public housing system she now appears to have neglected. At a time when Britain is enduring yet another harsh winter, with energy bills soaring, food prices rising and wages stagnating, Hopkins delivered a piercing question that echoes across the country. Asterisk. How did we let this happen? Asterisk. It's a question that hangs heavy in every underheated home, every late-night conversation around the kitchen table, and in the minds of voters who feel betrayed. Because, as Hopkins pointed out, Angela Rayner wasn't meant to be just another politician. She was meant to be different, a voice for real people.
Breaking news from a wonky world of cockwombles, because, quite honestly, there's so much refused to acknowledge what's happening here in the UK and what's being done to you. I would say this, if you carry on like this with your head in the sand, it's always going to be so much easier, isn't it, for the government to take you right up the...
Ordinary Britain's people, who once hoped for a leader brave enough to say, "Time's enough is enough," times now find themselves staring at yet another politician accused of playing the very game they promised to end. Katie Hopkins' fury wasn't theatrical outrage, it was raw, unfiltered frustration, and whether you agree with her or not, that emotion resonates because it reflects a deeper national mood. Millions across the UK feel ignored, betrayed and mocked by a political class that smiles for the cameras, then disappears when it's time to deliver. When Hopkins launched her verbal assault, it wasn't just aimed at Angela Rayner. It was a sweeping indictment of Labour's leadership, a party once built to defend ordinary people, but now seen by many as having abandoned them entirely. This isn't merely another political scandal. It's a symptom of something far more corrosive, a widening gulf between the governed and those who govern. And as this controversy deepens, Labour's silence is deafening. No emergency press conference, no genuine accountability. Just the same recycled line, asterisk, "We take these matters seriously," asterisk, words repeated so often they've lost all meaning. But for the average Briton struggling with rising bills, collapsing public services, and record distrust in politics, that silence says more than any statement ever could. Here's the uncomfortable truth. This scandal isn't just about one discounted house. It's about double standards, the kind that cut to the heart of Britain's democratic integrity. Because if an ordinary citizen misled officials on legal documents, they'd face prosecution. Yet when a senior minister does it, we're told there's context. That's not accountability, it's privilege. And that's what fuels public anger. Not only the hypocrisy, but the smug certainty that they'll get away with it. That the public is too weary or distracted to care. But they're wrong. People do care. Step into any pub or cafe and you'll hear the same refrain: pensioners skipping meals to heat their homes, young families trapped in temporary accommodation, nurses working double shifts and still queuing at food banks. Meanwhile, ministers debate housing policies from their second homes. That's why Hopkins' words cut through, not because she's diplomatic or refined, but because she's asking the questions politicians refuse to face. Why is the housing minister flipping homes while families can't even find one to rent? How can someone promise 1.5 million new homes, deliver none, and still keep their post? What happened to political shame? There was a time when scandal meant resignation, when leaders stepped down not because they were caught, but because they understood they'd failed those they served. That era is gone. Today, politics is about survival, deny, deflect, distract, and wait for the headlines to fade. Rayner's team is following that familiar script, but this time the public may not forget so easily, because this isn't just incompetence, it's betrayal. And it comes at a moment when trust in government is already hanging by a thread. This could have been a moment of redemption, an opportunity for Rayner to face the nation, admit fault, and call for genuine reform. If you want more sharp, honest, and unfiltered political analysis, subscribe and stay tuned. This is Times, UK Politics Now. Times giving voice to the people every single day.